What I want to show you now is I need to kind of put everything together into some type of grid structure. We're starting to build this all out. So I've got a lot of information on here that I want to include. And you can see I've already filled my artboard substantially here. But I've got a whole bunch of information here. You know, it's all about grocery stores. So we've already worked on these with the cost of grocery bills there. We got electricity use in the grocery store, the cost of butter over the years, the top reasons why people shop, you know, when barcodes were actually started, top 10 items purchased there in a grocery store. You can actually figure that out. All this other great stuff. So I got to put this together in a way that's going to be visually interesting and fun. You know, there's some little tidbits there that may take a little bit more presence on the page. Other things that, like this big long list. Do I really need to have it take up a lot? Who knows? We're going to see. So what I want to do is I want to build a grid structure that I can then bring into Illustrator so that I can have this and I can begin to start to block this out and tell my story of how it's going to look and how it's going to feel. I'm not quite sure what kind of spatial relationships I'm going to be working with here, so I'm just going to build a grid structure and I'm going to do a quick outline of the story, which is probably going to evolve over time. Now, I do have my little grid tool here that I can go in Illustrator and I can draw a grid, but what I don't like about this is that there's no space between the grid, because I like that little buffer zone. So actually, I switch over to InDesign. I know, it's not an InDesign class, it's an Illustrator class, but I can make a grid here. I'm going to create a new document in Illustrator, or in InDesign here, and it's going to be a big poster. It's going to be a 24 by 36 poster. And I'm going to do 18 by 24 inches. 24 inches because I don't want to translate into picas right now. And here's my page size. And this is the size I'm going to do my infographic poster. I want to create a grid. I'm going to use my rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag on and touch my guides or my margins. And while I have my mouse key held down, I'm going to use my up arrow. Up arrow is going to allow me to create rows. Right arrow is going to allow me to create columns. And I like to do odd numbers of rows and columns because it makes it a little bit more dynamic. I don't have anything, when I put something in there, I can have it be 2 or 3 columns wide or 4 columns wide. And I just like to do odd things. Odd number of things, odd number of rows, columns, a little bit more dynamic. You know, you can have symmetry, but you can have, you get it. Okay. What I'm going to do is got the tint down on my thing right here. So this is what my whole thing is going to look like right there. And it's kind of hard to see. If I make that black again, you may be able to see that. But there's my grid structure right here. And I'm going to take this grid structure and I can actually just take it right from InDesign and I can copy it right into Illustrator. I can also save it as a PDF. I'm going to just export this as a PDF. File export, export it as a grid, print PDF here. Really doesn't matter the quality of it here. High quality print is fine. View after exporting. It's going to launch the Acrobat file. There's my grid structure. Great. Now I'm going to jump over. It's that simple, folks. I know. I'm going to jump over to Illustrator, create a new Illustrator file. I think I did it 18 by 24. Open. Go to my desktop there. File open. Desktop. There's my grid. And I can copy the entire grid, copy it, put it right into my document here, and I'm going to go into my layers, and I'm going to create a new set of layers here. This is going to be my grid. I'm going to put my object on the grid, drop it behind there, and I'm going to lock the grid. And so I see my grid here. It's very faint in there, which is just fine. I don't want to see it the whole time. One of the advantages of putting the grid structure in here is that I now have the ability to snap to these areas. Okay? So if I'm drawing on my actual artwork layer here and I want to draw something, you can see that I can snap to that grid structure even though it's locked on my layer. I've got the grid structure. So how I would go through and loosely lay out my storyline is this. I would actually create a layer, and this is going to be my story. I can spell it correctly. I have my story. And I'm just going to kind of lay this out on how I'm going to actually visualize this whole thing coming together. And again, this is going to be a work in progress here. So let me get all my panels snap together here. It's like walking into a spider web and everything sticks to your face. There we go. Okay, much better. Whew. That was painful. So I create a new layer called my story here. I can just barely see my grid. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to just build a basic structure here of containers of where my story is going to go. Now, I realize when I'm dealing with my family here, you know, the cost of groceries for an average family, it takes up a lot of information. So I'm going to make this to be my headline here. And I have all this grid structure that I can then use and I can put together and just kind of spell out the area. I'm just doing an outline right here. So maybe I have a container and the cost of groceries for the family is going to take up this much space right there. And then I may do my little chart or graphic right here for that next to it, or maybe it takes up 3 columns right there, and then my chart or graphic with some explanation takes up 2 columns, something like that. Okay. And now I've got other information here. So I've got, you know, the amount of electricity, butter, where it costs, you know, other items here, the barcode, things like that. And I would probably spend a little bit more time on this. I'm just giving you a brief overview of how I do that. And it's like, you know, okay, the history of butter right here, maybe a little bit of fun. Maybe it just goes across 2 rows or 2 columns here, 1 row, and I just kind of snap it right to my grid structure, so I get an idea of kind of building stuff in there. All right, that could be a little bit of fun. I do have stuff that's all about bacon, and I know bacon is really important, so that's going to take up this amount of information right there on the page. You know, we do have kids falling out of shopping carts. We're going to include that. We don't want to make that a headline story there. You know, the cost of butter over the years right there, well, that's kind of important, so that may be the cost of butter over the years. You know, how about apples ripening? Well, you know how apples actually ripen here. Who knows, that may take up this amount of space right there. Like I said, I'm just kind of winging it, okay? I'm putting it on the page just to get the visual sense of how this stuff can go. I may change this, but I have to start with an outline at some point. What else do we have here? Oh, we got the electricity use, which is good, how bacon's used, and the amount of sugar people drink from soda and things like that. Okay, well, here we go. You know, this could be a perfect thing for soda right here. And that could be, you know, all this information for the amount of soda that people drink, what they do. Actually, this could work too for, you know, the top 10 things in the grocery store. And also too, I may take out a little section of the bacon area too here. I don't have to keep them as solid blocks. I can just, you know, pick and choose. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll just go in and create a box right there so that this comes together here. Don't know. But I just want to kind of spell this out. And you see kind of how the story is going to go. And I look at it and it's like, oh, you know, all these 4 things line up here. It's like, I don't really like that. So this may happen where, you know, this becomes a smaller story right here. This becomes a larger story right there, something like that. And visually, this may just come down here to kind of break it up a little bit different. And, you know, maybe that story stops here. And maybe I piece in a little story over here, stuff like that, okay? I'm just building a grid structure here so I get some kind of sense in how the information is going to fit. And since I put very little thought into this whole thing, I just wanted to give you a quick idea. But again, I'm using my grid structure and my smart guides to kind of snap all this area to those edges of my grids here. So I get a pretty good sense and a bounding box around those objects that I know exactly where it's going to be. And by creating this grid structure too, this also has done a great job here to be able to let me keep spacing in between my objects as well. Consistent spacing is always good, and that helps me with my grid structure. So it could very easily turn out to be something like this. I know I'm going to mess with it, but there's kind of my story, and I'm sticking to it until I feel like changing it. So that's what I have. I can turn on and turn off that story, and I can just turn it on to see if I'm using the correct spacing here. And there I have it. So there's my story. I'm going to have to unlock my grid here because I have a little bit of a hard time seeing this. And so I need to make this about 30% so I can see a little bit better. So I can snap to that. Does that look? Yep. Okay. I like that a bit better. So story is going to be underneath everything so I can see what's going on with the story. And this is going to be my artwork layer as we go and we build. Cool. There's my grid. There's kind of my story layout there, kind of a little haphazard, and that's what we have. So now I got my grid structure laid out, and I'd done a little bit of work here before, and I don't know if I like this, which I'm going to grab right here. I'm going to group this all together. I'm going to copy this over and switch over to here. I'm going to put this in. Of course, I'm going to scale the whole thing down. I'm going to rotate it because this looks like something that would go nicely horizontal right there. And you know, maybe this comes in and it takes up this amount of space here, or maybe that's too big and I can always scale it down to this amount of space, and maybe it fits beautifully into one little row of copy. Okay, that could be it. Kind of a nice little visual there. Jump back here, and I've kind of spelled these out into kind of a basic shape with all these. These I'm going to copy as well. And this may fit into the space right here. I don't know. Ooh, big. And I'm going to hold down my Option key so I can scale from the middle. Put this right across. Snap that right in. Now I can see how that's going to fit into my rows and columns. Again, you notice how I love to be symmetrical about things. Well, the grid structure allows me to snap these items here and put everything in. It's like, oh my gosh, talk about awesome planning. I mean, when you do this enough, seriously, it like fits in there perfectly, okay? Not to say that I'm great, but okay, it is what it is. I'm going to line this up with my grid structure. I group that all together. I'm going to group this all together. I group this all together, and I group this all together. Now, with my alignment features, I'm going to select all 4 of these groups, go to my alignment, and I'm going to distribute everything horizontally. So now I have equal spacing between everything. And now, already, I've got one shindiggity of an awesome infographic starting right here. Yeah? I may not use this. I mean, this may be kind of bold. I may do this as kind of redundant here, but it kind of gives a nice little infographic here. Now, I did introduce a gray, just to kind of give a little bit of contextual color here. That may end up being white, and I may end up using gray for a background, a technique that I learned from Apple, because they always do a gray background with white instead. Really cool. But again, I'm just starting to plug this stuff in. Now, obviously, I don't talk to myself like I talk to you, and I try a lot of different things here, but I'm trying to make it look like I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to make sure I save this so that if something goes wrong here, I at least have something to fall back on. Great. So I got my information in there. I want to put a headline in here, and I'm going to take my type tool, and I'm going to do supermarket facts and tidbits as my infographic. Is it a supermarket or should we use grocery store? Supermarket, not so supermarket?
I like supermarket.
Well, it sounds so super.
Yeah.
Supermarket, facts, and tidbits. Yeah, we'll just do facts. Okay, so of course, soupy market, like I said, I can do a lot of things. Typing is not one of them. So I'm going to select my font right there. I can't even remember the font that I used before. Gotham, that's right. See, because I've got them there. Okay, so Gotham, right there, Gotham book. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. And I'm going to put that right across the top there. And I'm going to kern that so that it actually fits right in. So there we go. So it tops out at the top of that. And sorry, folks, I just have to do a quick little bit of kerning here just because of the anal retentiveness. Quick and easy way to kern. Don't bother to use your mouse key to go in and move your cursor from letter to letter here. Just put your cursor in there and use your your arrow keys. I'm going to move it over and then Option left and right arrow. Left tightens, right loosens. Let go of the Option key. Move your cursor to the next one using your arrow keys and tighten that up. Tighten that up too, like so, and just go through and make everything good. I don't normally kern, but when I do, I do it with a vengeance. I want to go through and I want to make sure that everything looks good, and I only do this on my headlines right here. And I don't want to use black. I want to make sure that I use all the color samples that I had before. So I'm going to grab all those colors that I had chosen before, make sure I put this in here, and I'm going to park those right there, front and center. So now I can get my color palette and I can understand my color palette. Doesn't help that my gray happens to be the exact color of the background, but nonetheless. So supermarket facts, I may go in and I may do as a dark red here. Don't know why, but that can work as well. So there's my little supermarket facts. Okay. Awesome. Got that. Don't quite know where I'm going to place it, but I think we're on our way to putting together an infographic right here. You know what? For some reason, I just feel that this needs to be over here. And this kind of needs to be reduced because I want that space there. We'll see, because this may go away completely or go into something else. Don't know. You know, we can move this around. Not a problem. I want to put a little divider here along here because I don't want to do a box or a bar or something like that. I want to do something fun and something interesting. So I could just do a little dotted line, or I could do, you know, something that's kind of fun. If you do a box or you just do a divider bar, it isn't as fun. And it also kind of just messes up everything. So, you know, I think I'm just going to draw a line here across the whole thing. And I'm going to just do my little transform effect right here with my little zigzag. And I think I'm just going to do a bit of a zigzag here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a couple of ripples. And of course, nothing shows up because I have no stroke. There we go. And there it is. And I need to edit that. So go into my appearance, edit my zigzag so I can actually see. Size needs to be relatively low. I'm going to do lots of little ripples. One thing that Adobe did not do is they didn't keep what's called a little sticky. In Photoshop and InDesign, when you click on a preview button in any dialog box, it will always stay on when you click on it. InDesign or Illustrator obviously did not get that message. They did not. Okay, so I'm going to do this kind of a red as well. Actually, I'm going to do this as a brown. Flop that over there, bump up the point size a little bit. Okay, right there. Cool. There it is. I think that needs to be a little bit more bold. It just needs a little bit more beef up there. Okay. Yeah, I think it's good. That, let's see here. Gonna bump that point size down. Doesn't need to be as bright. And I think it needs to be yellow instead. Swap the stroke for the fill. Put that stroke back. Right there. Yeah, better. Definitely better. Ooh, got some nice color going on there.